So I'm going to assume that it's been a rough past 5 days if you're a Mountaineer fan like me, and all of the disappointed talk that you have probably heard from some of your friends might have been tough at the water cooler yesterday and today if you're running into some of your coworkers who are Penn State fans, Penn State grads, even some Pitt fans out there, or any other fans out there in college football who make you feel as if you're like a dog between your tail between your legs and you're not really feeling good too much about your team. It's kind of easily, you're not Florida State-esque, but you're kind of feeling that same kind of way, looking ahead to an Albany matchup that should be completely one-sided, dominated for the Mountaineers, and really won't tell us all that much until 10 days away from the backyard brawl up at Acrisure Stadium. And even then, this Pitt team is not going to be going to a national title, playing for an ACC championship, anything like that. So we might not even know really what we should expect for this 2024 season until West Virginia gets all the way to its matchup against Kansas. Now, rivalry matchups can mean anything, and that's not really what I want or the intention of this video to be, to talk about the backyard brawl. We'll get there, and we'll talk about it next week, and even the Albany matchup. Bring that to you tomorrow evening into Friday. But instead, there were some things, despite the debacle that was the 34-12 loss at Milan Puskar Stadium this past Saturday. There were some silver linings from that game. It may not have felt that way, but if you look read between the lines, take the whole game aspect out of it, look at some of the individual victories that you may have overlooked. And again, people, this was week one, so there was a lot still that we were thinking about for this 2024 team all off season into this season that really started to, I would say, shake itself out in that week one matchup that we can see as a potential silver lining from that matchup. So first and foremost, I just got a quick video here for you. Some of the things that I took away from that game that I really like to see. Leaving on a positive note, think positively about this Mountaineer team. I know that the frustration really boiled over, it seemed like, on social media over the weekend with Neil Brown, with Jordan Leslie, this entire coaching staff, some of the players. It's quick that you can think of maybe glass half empty rather than glass half full, and it's still a 12-game season, people. West Virginia will still face 4 more ranked opponents by Halloween. So this season is going to go fast here through the months of September and October, and it's time to buckle in. And it's not a bad thing to still think that there is potential for this season. Like Pat McAfee said on his show yesterday, that still Big 12 championship is well on the line, and there is that outside shot possibility. But some things do have to come together. But we'll talk about those things more down the road as the season unfolds. But from week one, again, one of the biggest questions I feel like of the entire off season was, what's right tackle going to look like? And Nick Malone did an awesome job. He had the highest Pro Football Focus grade of any West Virginia University offensive lineman on Saturday while going up against Denai Dennis Sutton. So arguably the second or third most talented player on this vaunted Penn State defense, he took to task for 4 quarters and did really well. Wyatt Milam and Tomas Rimac were right behind Nick Malone in their PFF grades, but it was just, for me, a pleasant surprise. I feel like that could pay dividends for the WVU offense if Malone can not just be the 5th guy on the offensive line, but could and be someone who's really looking over his shoulder, playing tight, thinking that Xavier Bosley's going to usurp him at some point at that right tackle position. So if he can trust in himself, if he can do it against Denai Dennis Sutton, he can do it against anybody that West Virginia faces for the entire regular season. He's a 6th-year guy. This is his moment. He's from Morgantown. Show out, shine for this state and for this team. So if West Virginia can put their faith as an offense and Nick Malone to go out there and do his job, I, as a fan, feel much more comfortable. So that's the number one takeaway that I feel like from this entire game. Nick Malone looked really good at right tackle. Number 2 is there already an initial West Virginia or wide receiver hierarchy that we're starting to learn? Look at some of the snap counts, and I want to credit Keenan Cummings from Rivals from doing the articles on these snaps counts, on these PFF grades. They do a great job over there at Rivals. Hudson Clement, 47 snaps on the day, 2 catches, 34 yards. Had the highest PFF grade of any wide receiver for the Mountaineers on Saturday. And like I said, I feel like in the offseason, I felt like there is a rapport building between Garrett Green and Hudson Clement in a similar fashion that David Sills was Will Greer's wide receiver number 1. Although Traylon Ray did have 4 catches for 37 yards, so leading the team in receptions. Did have 34 snaps on the day. Ray had a little bit trouble, like first play going to him, same play as we saw in the Duke's Mayo Bowl, it seemed like, and just wasn't able to create separation around 2 defenders. So looking for a little bit more consistent play out of Traylon Ray. Also, he was at the kick return unit, only had 2 returns for a total of 35 yards, so that has to get better. And then also Preston Fox. It's 46 snaps, so 1 behind Hudson Clement. Very similar grade as Clement on the day, 2 catches for 41 yards. I feel like I'm really starting to develop this narrative with Preston Fox is he makes the hard catches look easy. The higher degree of difficulty, the more chance that Preston Fox is going to go out there and catch it. It's the ones that hit him square in the hands, on the run, wide open. Just got to make sure that he secures. It's those ones. So I don't know necessarily if I feel as if Clement, Fox, and Ray are, and then Cole Taylor obviously as the pass catching tight end, are those West Virginia's 4 best pass catchers. Is Jaden Bray among them? Is Rodney Gallagher among them? We didn't see much of Justin Robinson on this day, first game. In his 1 year that he gets as a Mountaineer, yep, West Virginia's paying him all this NIL money rather than allocating those dollars towards a defensive stud. That's okay. Wink, wink. You know where I'm going with this? So, be interesting to see, some smaller-ish bodied guys in Clement, Fox. Are they West Virginia's best bet at receiver? I like Clement at 1. And then, Traylon Ray already showing he's kind of being that 3rd wide receiver. So Bray in behind, Robinson in behind, same with Gallagher. So do we have a top 3 wide receiver core developing in those 3 guys? Number 3, and I talked about this on the post-game show, Traylon Davis was an excellent run blocker. Not going to get the PFF grade from terms of his receiving ability, only 1 catch for 3 yards on the day. Didn't do much in that aspect, and still is, even in his 4th year, developing as a pass catcher. But he's an excellent run blocker. He was leading the charge anytime West Virginia did have forward progress in the run game. He was hitting the key blocks that he needed to make, he was doing so. So really liked what I saw out of Traylon Davis, and he's only going to help this team whenever West Virginia's in 2 tight end sets or he spells Cole Taylor, if those hands can develop. Love what I'm seeing out of 81. Number 4, and I'm glad that he's getting notoriety after that, whatever you want to call it, play against Drew Aller, in which he stiff-armed but still was tackled by Drew Aller. But the defensive most valuable player of the day was Josiah Trotter. In his first collegiate game, fantastic, team high, 10 total tackles with a pass defense. He had the highest Pro Football Focus grade of any Mountaineer on the day at an 82.9. That's elite. And I think it makes more sense on a related topic to have him at middle linebacker in this 3-3-5 scheme. I see him along the lines of a Tony Fields or a Lee Koba, a guy who's going to collect 100 or plus tackles on the season. That's not a knock necessarily against Trey Lathan, but we saw what Trey Lathan was able to do at the will linebacker position in those 4 games that he was healthy before he got injured at TCU. Looked stout. Really looked good, with Koba in the middle at that will linebacker position. Does it make more sense to get Josiah Trotter involved at middle linebacker? Now, having worked with him all off season in the spring, in the summer, fall camp, I'm not one to say that I know as much about defensive schematics and all of these things as much as I argue against some of the things that Jordan Leslie does. If they see his best fit at outside linebacker, then so be it. But and Lathan at the middle linebacker. I don't think they would have them at those two positions if they didn't see those were the two best places individually and for the team for both those guys. But what I'll say, I really feel like West Virginia could go to a true. I disagree with this stance that just because West Virginia feels as if it only has 6 linebacker options and it's a long season and they're going to hurt, why not go to a true 3-4 with Ty French on one side, who did get just as many snaps on the day as Reed Carrico. Trying to stealing my own thunder in the segue where I'm going with this. But French at one side, Trotter at one middle linebacker position, Lathan at the other position, and Tyron Bradley at the other. It makes total sense to me to give this a shot, to take this safety position that's completely out of whack off the field, put Aubrey Burks back into his more free safety position, move Anthony Wilson to the position he played last year at strong safety where he can be a thumper in the middle of the field. That's what he's best at. And take a Jaheim Joseph, take a Kokora Tarnu off the field. So you're playing, again, with 4 linebackers, 4 defensive backs, but you can use these guys in creative ways. And I feel like mix up your blitzes, mix up your schemes, which gaps you're going to penetrate with your defensive linemen to rotate your outside linebackers. And I feel much better about this team trying to rush Ty French on one side, Tyron Bradley on the other side, leaving Lathan and Trotter in the middle to make plays, and then leave Aubrey Burks in the secondary, and same with Wilson. I feel like that can make a pretty tough, or at least better than what we've seen, 6-man pass defense to rush 4 or rush 5 in that case. So, and why I say this is my next point. I think the silver lining was Reed Carrico. Getting to see him on the day. 4 tackles, had the 3rd highest Pro Football Focus grade of any WVU defensive player. Of what I saw of him, he was involved in every single play. I feel like he was down on the field, right in the vicinity, either making the tackle or getting involved in the play. So I really liked him. I think he's more athletic than what I was kind of expecting, faster. Again, he played at Ohio State, so he's been in a good culture, in a good system. I think he needs that opportunity to thrive. So again, if it's not Lathan or it's not French, find a way to get Carrico involved onto the field. So you have these 6 linebackers that I feel at this point in time much more comfortable than these defensive linemen, especially the 2 senior leaders that you were expecting to take a leap forward in just one game. So, like the linebackers, what I see at least out of Carrico and Trotter early. Silver linings to this game. Number 6 being TJ Jackson and Asani Redwood. If you am reading between the lines, I was not high on the performance by Sean Martin on Saturday. Not at all. And Eddie V's not that far behind him. Instead, TJ Jackson had the highest PFF grade, 71, of any WVU defensive lineman on the day. 3 tackles, 1 for a loss, and he had that fumble recovery on the botched snap by Aller. I think he has the size and speed combination worthy of a Power 4 spot. I think it's worth watching moving forward already, because now at this point in time, Eddie V, Sean Martin, TJ Jackson all have 1 season left in Morgantown. So, and it's a results-based business. I don't care necessarily that Sean Martin was one of the defensive representatives with Aubrey Burks at Media Day for the last 2 years. This is it. So, who's ever's the best plays is that 1A and 1B rotation. And right now, TJ Jackson looks like he could start over Sean Martin or Eddie Vesterinen, however which way you want to go about it. And not as good of a grade, but what I will say about Asani Redwood, really happy to see him on the field. Really dealt with injuries over the last 2 seasons. Now he's in his 3rd year, did not play in the spring, kind of limited you hear of what comments you could hear from Neil Brown over the summer. It sounds like he's finally good enough to give it a go. and at 26 snaps, did have 2 tackles in the day. This is his opportunity. He's getting those 1B/second string reps. Go out there and make the most of it. Prove that West Virginia has a guy in the pipeline for 2025 that when Martin, Vesterinen, and Jackson graduate, that okay, Asani Redwood showed, and same with Fatorma Mulba, that West Virginia is going to have enough at that defensive line position that it doesn't have to do what it did at cornerback this past offseason and get 5 transfers. Because right now, that's kind of the way I'm looking at this defensive line. That's going to be the weak spot. Already looking ahead to 2025 because of the graduations of 3 guys on the defensive line. 4 if you count Jackson, who's just a 1-year transfer. Trade deadline kind of player. So like what I saw, in limited action there by Redwood, and just nice to see him on the field, and TJ Jackson. Did you catch it? Here's my point number 7. Rodney Gallagher did see the field defensively. Just 11 snaps, had 2 total tackles. Number 24 was involved on the field. Seeing some of the highlights that if you've seen across Twitter, even was going at it, at post play, holding up Ty Warren from Penn State, who has probably 4 or 5 inches on him and 60 to 80 pounds, and he was going at it. Rodney Gallagher, if he can truly play, and when I heard Neil Brown say over the summer at one point in time that he was West Virginia's best defensive back in man coverage, I was like, he's going to play. That's no doubt. He's going to play at some point in time. So to get in week 1 already, wow, okay, this is for real. If it's not, if it is going to work out at wide receiver, either due to injuries or, perhaps Neil Brown just likes the development of some of these players ahead of him, in the age. I'm looking at Preston Fox specifically. And, if Traylon Ray is more advanced in his development than Rodney Gallagher is, why not? Give him a shot. If he can play nickelback, it seemed like corner. He's an athletic guy. He's fast. He'll figure it out. So and if he's got the kind of, how do I say this, wide receiver skills, or he's just a pure athlete, then I feel like get him across both position groups. Get him in the defensive backfield, get him at the wide receiver core, working on those similar kind of, opposite routes, going mano-a-mano with the wide receivers, flip him. Have him run one route, and then have him play the defensive back and cover one of his teammates who's a wide receiver and do that. So I'm not saying that, I agree with this move. I think that it's the best thing for the team, but I am willing to see the experimentation to get Rodney Gallagher out onto the field rather than him just sitting the bench. If he's not going to get involved in special teams because Neil Brown and Jeff Coons trust Preston Fox more to just stand back there and call fair catches at punt return, so there's not an opportunity really for Gallagher to show off any sort of talents there, and kick return is still in flux of who's going to be at those positions, then get him out there on defense. Of what I saw on Saturday, I trust. I don't know if I want to go necessarily this far, but there was nothing that Kakura Tarnu showed me in that matchup against Penn State. I know Andy Kotelnicki, one of the best offensive minds in college football, and he was able to make some second quarter adjustments to make easy tosses for Drew Aller to make plays on the day. But Rodney Gallagher, former 4-star recruit, really, a player that you're paying high in NIL money. He's from a local high school over across the border in the state of Pennsylvania. It is good for everybody involved to see a player like Rodney Gallagher get his fair opportunity at a many number of different positions than a 1-year guy that you're pulling over from Jackson State. So I'll pause there on that. Last thing I'll say, injury-free, silver lining. Did you see all the bodies that were dropping during that game? Jaheim White, you thought maybe he either busted up his shoulder or broke his wrist. Wyatt Milam just mysteriously was absent for the second half, and Johnny Williams is having to block Abdul Carter. And then Trey Lathan going down. Thought maybe it was just cramps. So to see or hear from Neil Brown that everybody is, relatively healthy, maybe just took some shots, had some stingers, had some bumps and bruises. Again, it was merciless by this Penn State defense out there. I mean, like I said in the recap video, it seemed as if it was like longest yard, the guards versus the inmates out there, in the way that they were hitting West Virginia's players on the day. So to hear that everybody's injury-free, I mean, could you imagine being like LSU right now and their player who kept their offense in it against USC, even despite the loss? John Emery tears a former 5-star recruit, tears his ACL for the second time in fewer than 12 months. Like, devastating for some of these teams to have these game one injuries that you miss. You hate to see anybody go down with an injury. Don't get me wrong. Like, these guys train too hard, they work too hard, all for these, 12 weeks of the year. Like, you can get injured, between January and August, depending upon what it is, and, you have the benefit of time. Once the season hits, you don't. Because then you got to practice, you got to get hit. When you get in the game, you're getting hit. Like, the recovery time in season is not what it is out of season. So when you see guys get hurt, know that lingers. That's not necessarily ever going to get better, that these players have to battle through it. So come week 13 of the regular season, it's more about who can survive the attrition and by that point in the season, because everybody's hurt to certain extents. So to know that there weren't any devastating injuries, praise God. Thank you. I'm glad to have all those 3 guys I mentioned back. I'd like to see Jacoby Spells back. I know Dantes Fagan played pretty well in relief at third-string corner when Aiden Gardens checked out and they subbed out the starters. But I want to see Jacoby Spells out there. I really believe in this kid. 4-star, former 4-star prospect out of one of the best high schools in the country. First year coming up with that pick 6, big spot, big moment against Virginia Tech on the road down at Lane Stadium. Last year, I feel like because of Beanie Bishop and Malachi Ruffin really securing those top 2 cornerback spots, and I don't know how necessarily he was banged up, gets hurt in the spring, don't know if he's going to play. If he has to sit out against Albany, that's okay. I'd just like to see Jacoby Spells by the Pitt game. Because then we're starting to trend into territory where I'm going to start to have PTSD of a Charles Wood situation all over again. Should he redshirt? Should he not redshirt? I don't want to even go down that road, entertain that idea, but want to see Jacoby Spells. If he's back onto the field for this game, fantastic. I'll mention that either in the post-game show or sometime next week. But then by the Pitt game, want to see number 6 back out there. So really like what he brings to this team. So there's 8 pieces of data that I feel like that if you're a Mountaineer fan and you're just feeling like you lost your best friend, or you're feeling really down and out about this season already, look at some of the things that you can point to and say, okay, there were some positives that now West Virginia can use these next 2 weeks against Albany and Pitt to build off. Hopefully, if that was its worst effort of the entire season, you got it out of your system. And now, Garrett Green and the leaders on this team need to have a, not players like a come to Jesus meeting or something like that, but this is their time, to wash that game away and move forward. And look at some of the things, you can point to some of these positives as things to keep the morale high. All right, so thanks for tuning in. Love to hear your thoughts. Leave your comments here on YouTube. And I'll be back either tomorrow night or Friday morning with the preview show of West Virginia and Albany for week 2. Thanks for tuning in. Hail West Virginia. Let's go.